President, I beg your pardon.
Just stop it!
President Buhari rounds off COP24 with tribute to Holocaust victims of the Nazi era in Poland.
If the government does not steal the money, there will be enough for all of us. That is why Muhammadu Buhari is the right president for us.
We will better your lives if re-elected, Vice President Oshibajo tells Nyanya Karu residents.
No pay, no plenary. National Assembly staff block chambers in protest over new salary structure.
Almost 8 months ago, and nothing seems to be happening. And you agree with me that they are almost on their way out of this place.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the anti-corruption war 3 years later.
We will never get tired of discussing this monster, which everyone agrees that it's been the bane of Nigeria's development, but yet seems to have defied solutions.
Well, we all know what you're talking about, Kirian, even though you haven't mentioned it. Corruption is certainly what you're referring to, I suppose.
That's what I can say, because this hydra-headed monster has continued to be the concern of many. Of course, has also been on the national discourse and has never ceased to be a daunting challenge to tackle.
But then corruption and its allies have never had it so tough as they have had in the last 3 years. No doubt about that, Kirian.
Exactly, and I can't agree less. It was a period that corruption was challenged, attacked and bruised. Impunity and blatant stealing of public funds gave way to caution and prudence, with transparency and accountability becoming the order of the day.
Well, the introduction of new ways of fighting corruption, strengthening old ways, and the anti-corruption institutions, as well as the political will of the president, together with his stern position on corruption, all have made it very difficult, if not unfashionable, to be openly and brazenly corrupt in Nigeria these days.
Now, corruption has not only been stopped on its track, funds corruptly acquired are also being recovered as the government enters into agreements with many countries to return looted funds.
And those who have been accused of that indeed it is no longer business as usual.
You can say that again, Kingsley. Corruption is becoming an orphan, and the plan by President Buhari is to kill it completely before it kills Nigeria.
So, what is invariably the milestone that has been achieved in the last 3 years in the anti-corruption fight? Hi, Stella.
Very well. Good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria. It was a moment of sober reflection and a thought-provoking sight to behold regarding man's inhumanity to man, as President Muhammadu Buhari paid tribute to Holocaust victims of the Nazi era in Poland. This was while visiting one of the German concentration camps, the Auschwitz Museum, to round off his official engagement in the European nation.
Well, I just quoted Shakespeare in my comment. There's the evil that man does lives after him.
So what do you have to tell those that are finding the embers of disunity and destabilization back home?
Literate and ignorant.
I could not help but imagine what was going through the minds of the victims at that time. But I think it will serve as a lesson for future.
To achieve a free, fair and credible 2019 general elections devoid of rancor, emphasis must be placed on a strengthened synergy between security apparatus and national reorientation by Nigerians. This was the focus at the Peace and Security Network quarterly confab with the theme towards 2019 general elections in Nigeria, securitization of the electoral process and the prevention of violence.
We have youth groups. What are the strategic plans of the security agencies to ensure that these youth groups are monitored? The civilian task forces are also monitored to ensure that they are not vulnerable for violence towards the 2019 elections.
This is not just for government or security forces, but for every Nigerian.
Nigerians were also reminded of the need to do away with inciting comments that can heat up the polity, but should rather put the interest of the nation first and be more patriotic. Now, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has expressed confidence that President Muhammadu Buhari will be re-elected for a second term in February 2019. He made this known at a national consultative forum organized by a committee of Buhari support groups in Abuja.
The problem of our country is not great plans. It is about whether, number one, the president is honest and truthful. If the Nigerian president is a truthful man, even if he doesn't do anything, you will save 50% of Nigeria's resources just because he's an honest man. Buhari is a man who wants to use the resources of this
structure, the feeding of our children. Now, just imagine the feeding of our children. It's not just for the food alone. It creates additional opportunity for the farmers.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the nation has enormous resources, enough to better the lives of Nigerians, and that President Muhammadu Buhari is committed to prudent management of the resources. The Vice President said this when he visited party leaders at Nyanya and Karu areas in the Federal Capital Territory.
All of us Nigerians, all of us who are here, we are going higher. We are going higher. I want you to believe that President Muhammadu Buhari is going to do even better and better and better. If the government does not steal the money, there will be enough for all of us. That is why Muhammadu Buhari is the right president for us.
And away from politics, the two chambers of the National Assembly were yesterday blocked by the parliamentary staff of Association of Nigeria National Assembly chapter in protest for the non-implementation of the new consolidated legislative salary structure. The protest paralyzed legislative activities.
Almost 8 months ago, and nothing seems to be happening. And you agree with me that they are almost on their way out of this place.
We approved an increase payment for them, which was captured the 2018 budget, which has not been implemented, and that's where we had hoped that that addition will be paid. So to the extent that the money is not released, there's no way we can affect the payment.
The 11th Forum of Laureates of the Nigerian National Order of Merit Awards kicked off in Abuja, with Nigerian intellectuals brainstorming on how the nation can put to positive use its diverse social, political and cultural leanings.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Who am I? I'm a caregiver, a slayer, a boss lady, a foodie. I am the chief quality inspector and chief organizer. And when I'm cooking with my Maggie Star, I become a kitchen grand master.
Every day, you choose to make the difference. That's why you choose Maggie Star, made from natural soya beans and other carefully selected ingredients to help you cook the difference.
I am the Chief Enjoyment Officer. And I'm the magnet that brings my family together. Need I say more? But best of all, I love what I do.
With With Maggie, cook the difference.
In line with the vision of promoting probity, accountability and transparency in the management of public funds, the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation has unveiled Compendium on Fiscal Rectitude in Government Revenue and Expenditure.
The Treasury Journal that we've recently launched dwells largely on the operations of the Treasury, and in particular, the reform initiatives that we drive as the Treasury, namely the Treasury Single Account, the IFSAS implementation, the IPPS, and a host of others.
Very incisive and educating. Grab a copy of the Treasury Journal from your vendor and get abreast with financial transactions such as monthly allocations within the federal, states, and local governments, Buhari's transformation policy on the Treasury, inroads to IGR, and many more mixed grilling stories. Remember, the Treasury Journal is a dependable ally for researchers, financial institutions, the academia, and policymakers. Treasury Journal, a fiscal rectitude in managing public funds.
My name is DK Berry Charles. I'm from Abuja local government area, Anambra.
I'm from Kano State, Fagge local government. I study in Kano State University of Science and Technology as a food scientist.
Applied for the Empower program, but I was reluctant because of the way that things have been going in this country. You know, is based on who you know, based on favoritism, your godfather, or maybe nepotism, religion, and ethnic stuff like that. So when we went there in Fagge local government, it was not based on maybe religion or ethnicity, but it was surely based on merit. Once you have your credential on ground, you are good to go.
I must testify that it is free of any form of nepotism.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
It's okay, I'm okay.
What happened?
It's just a little scratch, Mom. How can I play with bigger boys if I'm afraid of little scratches, right?
What comforts a mother most is to see her child growing up.
Done, I'll go.
Of course. But I know that as he learns to be brave, he'll face even more germs and the risk of infection.
That's why you need Dettol protection, because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Well, this is the midweek edition of Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We now go business. Central Bank of Nigeria injects $210 million into the interbank market as first intervention in the foreign exchange market for December. Joy Uzo is standing by with developments in finance and economy on Business News.
It's good to have you join us on Business News. We will revisit the decision by Qatar to quit the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, which is posing fears and uncertainty in global oil markets. The major fear is what will be the fate of oil exporting countries if crude oil prices crashed. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, was founded in 1960, basically to organize and ensure stable supply of crude oil and its prices globally. In recent times, the organization has been facing challenges ranging from its decision to cut down oil supply to stabilize the market to interference of global politics. The most recent one is a decision by Qatar to quit the organization from January 1st, 2019. Qatar is the 11th biggest oil producer in OPEC, pumping more than 600,000 barrels per day. Economists are of the view that walking away from OPEC's production controls could mean Qatar may increase output after leaving the group, thereby undermining efforts to support prices.
You know, that could spell disaster to OPEC. But then that means that there's going to be another big boy on the block, which will be the gas. So Nigeria needs to begin to think seriously. That is a case of emergency right now, because we're going to see the price drop to a level it has not dropped before. And so we need to produce more gas immediately a Marshall Plan to produce more gas, because we have good revenue coming from gas, so that we can, if we have to join the club, we'll join the club, but we need to produce more gas. Also, we need to focus on refining our products, midstream, downstream, refine at least 1.5 million. Dangote is going to be doing about 650,000 barrels. Let's have another coalition that will do another 650,000 barrels, so that at least 1.5 million barrels are being refined a day, will supply to African countries under the AFCFTA and under the ECOWAS ETLS. So we'll have a captive market where we can reap that benefit.
For major oil exporting countries like Nigeria, diversification of the economy is the answer. And South Africa emerged from its first recession in almost a decade in the third quarter of 2018, as recoveries in manufacturing and agriculture contributed to an increase in economic growth. Gross domestic product rose by an annualized 2.2% in 3 months through September, compared with a reversed 0.4% contraction in the previous quarter. Finally, Nigerian investors recorded 76.11 billion naira gain as the Nigerian Stock Exchange all-share index inched up by 0.68% to close above 31,000 basis points. Next is a graphic summary of the closing figures. That's business news. Thanks for your time. I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package and Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us now is a review of the stories in some of today's newspapers.
And joining us now in the studio is Bayo Atoyabi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, you're welcome to Wednesday's edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Bayo, good to see you.
Good morning, Nigeria.
We have stories that have come on, Kirian, to the front pages of the papers today from the Punch newspaper. Let's begin with the Punch newspaper and its lead story. Drama as workers shut down National Assembly. With a rider, turned back lawmakers say no alert, no plenary. With a rider, Saraki and Dogara give clerk Friday ultimatum. And you can see the two photographs on the front page of the paper there showing the National Assembly staff with placards protesting at the National Assembly yesterday. And this is over the non-implementation of the consolidated salary structure and other unpaid allowances. That's the list story, as I said. Kirian, I'm sure you also have that. Yes, Daily Trust. Let me take the Daily Trust. It's the photograph, actually, from the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. It's the main photograph there, just with a caption that also explains it and says, protesting National Assembly workers bar lawmakers from sitting. Kirian.
All right, and on the Daily Sun this morning, it also captured it this way: no pay, no seating. With a rider, National Assembly workers revolt, barricade complex over unpaid salaries and allowances on page 10 of the Daily Sun. Maybe Bayo should come in here before we continue.
Yes, actually the workers at the National Assembly did what they describe as picketing. And by picketing, they meant that they will stay away from work between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. And at 2 p.m., they will return to their work places. But in the meantime, they were demanding the implementation of a consolidated salary, 28% increase, which they have been negotiated and agreed upon since 10 years ago, but it has not been paid. They were also calling for delaying their promotions and also some unpaid allowances. They were threatening no alert, no sitting. The Deputy Senate President actually came trying to make overtures to him, but they will not listen to him. So later on, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives and principal officers invited the officers of the union to a meeting. Meanwhile, the Senate leadership has given instructions to the clerk of the National Assembly to ensure that by Friday, all the issues that are outstanding regarding it are sorted out. But the clerk of the National Assembly has said that he's been in correspondence with them over a long period of time, and they are all aware that what was agreed upon had actually been captured in the 2018 budget. And like all other agencies, what they are suffering is the non-release of the funds, and that is why they have not been paid. But meanwhile, at 2 p.m. yesterday, the workers had returned to work, but they wanted to make the point that they cannot continue to wait. Okay. But earlier on, there had also been some protestation by a group of workers at the National Assembly, which they call legislative aides. These are aides to members. They also have been crying for a long time that their salaries are not paid. Usually, the elected legislators are supposed to pay for the services of these legislative aides.
All right, now let's return to the Daily Sun newspaper and take the rest of the stories down the front page. Also, besides the nameplate, to have 2019 as the kicker, Tinubu hits Atiku. Says in a rider, ex-VP confused and directionless. And then APC jittery, says PDP, is on page 6. And now let's go down below the photograph of the Daily Sun newspaper this morning. We have some stories there. Why there is gang up against Buhari, says Oshibajo, that's the VP, says President has stopped grant corruption. That's on page 11. Catholic Church disowns Mbaka on political endorsement on page 12. And DSS quizzes Anambra factional speaker. With a writer here, Maduagu contending speaker presides at plenary. That's on page 12. Now, at the bottom, it says a court orders destruction of 14 containers of tramadol on pages 4 and 5 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Okay,
let's come back to the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the paper, over 244.8 billion naira lost to breaches for Kedo's pipeline. That's attributed to the NNPC. Details can be found on page 27. 2019, Obasanjo, Atiku, and Secondus meet in Abuja. That's page 3. Also on page 3, court orders EFCC and DSS and police to arrest Diziani within 72 hours. PDP rented Sokoto crowd from Niger Republic, El-Rufai alleges. El-Rufai is the governor of Kaduna State. Details of that story can be found on page 2. And 2 earpieces there, beside the nameplate of the Punch. 8 soldiers, 10 Boko Haram terrorists killed in Borno and Yobe attacks, page 42. Also on page 42, Okorocha's son-in-law dumps APC, slams Oshomole. And right to the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, let's take a couple of stories from there. $8.1 billion demand. MTN opts for out-of-court settlement with CBN. And Buhari seeks help on safe release of remaining Chibok girls. That's page 41. Now, this is a kicker there saying cloning. Fear of Buhari makes some people mad and desperate, says Oshibajo, page 10. Again, Abuja activists charged with cyber stalking remanded in prison. And CBN to expose banks and others involved in forex infractions. That's page 30.
Yes, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, has alleged that there is a gang-up by some discredited Nigerians elite against President Muhammadu Buhari. And he says the reasons are not far-fetched because the section of the elite wishes Buhari dead because he stands against their access to the national treasury. He says between those who want resources for use for our country and her people, and those who want the resources to privatize our commonwealth. He compared 2010 and 2014, when Nigeria, according to him, earned $383 billion, to 2015 up to date, when Nigeria earned $112 billion, which is 60% less. However, within 3 years, $2.7 trillion has been invested in infrastructure. And he said, we are not stealing. We are using it because Buhari is the gatekeeper. They prayed for him to die. He didn't die. The fear of him made them desperate. So now they say he is Jibrin from Sudan. And he said the logic is if you can't discredit him, say he doesn't exist. And he said by the grace of God, the man will not only live long, but soon after winning the election, he will live behind the second term for a long time after his office.
Okay, are there other stories you would like to...
The other one is a court order from an FCT High Court that has directed the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, the Department of State Services, and the police, and other security agencies to, within 72 hours, produce before it the former Minister of Petroleum Resources. This followed an ex parte application by the Economic and Financial Crime Commission based on 5-count allegations of corruption. The FCC says the former minister left Nigeria for UK while investigation has been ongoing and has refused invitation to face trial. The court given 72 hours for them to get him to get her to court. I cannot imagine how they are going to do that. Meanwhile,
I was going to ask, how is it possible to get someone who is not residing in Nigeria to appear in 72 hours?
Well, if they have to follow the processes of extradition, they must produce a court processes that requires that she is required in Nigeria to face a court of law processes, and probably that is part of the process. But meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has said that his administration will not rest until the remaining Chibok girls that have been kidnapped are released. He was speaking with the president, also visited the Nazi concentration camp where he laid a wreath.
Okay, let's go to the Nigerian pilot now. Nigerian pilot, quickly. Below the nameplate, INEC warns against the use of state funds for campaigns on page 11. NIMC registered 33 Nigerians, targets 4,000 registration centers, is on page 12. Now, the lead headline, not life or death. That's the headline. And with 4 riders, Foreign Affairs Minister Geoffrey Onyama declares on Buhari's re-election bid. Says President was forced by well-wishers to recontest. Insists Buhari will accept the verdict of the electorate in 2019. That he wants a totally independent INEC to do the right thing. It's on page 8 of the Nigerian pilot. Below the photograph there, some striking stories there. Korota's son-in-law, as Kingsley read on the other day, daily, dumps APC, defects to Action Alliance. Hate speech, fake news must be collectively condemned. That's the National Orientation Agency. And then Army promotes 230 senior officers on page 11. No part of Nigeria is currently on siege. That's the APC spokesman. No work, no pay. Where workers, not slaves. NLC reacts. It's on page 3.
Okay. Now, let's return to the Daily Trust newspaper. Right at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, 3 headlines we're taken from there. Zamfara banditry. Give us rifles. Emir begs federal government. That's page 6. Many flee homes as Boko Haram attacks Borno village again. That's page 4. And on page 12, CBN, SGF, FIROS, shunned FOIA request. That's Freedom of Information Act requests over 20 trillion naira stamp duty revenue. That's on page 12, as I said, in greater detail. Bayo, any of the stories you want to take before we go to the editorial, which is on the New Telegraph?
Good news for candidates of the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination. JAM says that the registration will be in January, which means that the announcement made by the Honorable Minister will be effective for them and they will benefit from that. You will recall that the Minister had announced reduction from 5,000 naira for the forms to 3,500 to take effect from January. JAM now says that they will be selling the forms in January and there will be 6 weeks window for which there will be announcement. However, those who are registered for NECO will still have to pay the 11,350 because the reduction to 9,850 is to be effective January, and the deadline for registration for NECO was December, I think it's December this month. Meanwhile, the other concern is the Catholic Diocese of Enugu says the church has not endorsed any candidate for 2019 election. And this also was reiterated by the Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, John Cardinal Naika, says that it is not in the interest of the church to vote to support one political party against the other. However, he is lamenting that the situation now, we have 90 political parties, but there are no credible alternatives. When every politician says that we are here to serve our country, people, even from the village, laugh at them because nobody believes them.
All right, Bayo, let's take the editorial from the New Telegraph. It's at page 15, and it says, governors and labor's threats over minimum wage.
Well, minimum wage has been ongoing. Labour is saying that, as far as they are concerned, 30,000 naira minimum wage is a done deal. The Governors Forum are saying that they cannot afford to pay beyond 30,000 naira or they will shut down the economy. And governors are saying they cannot afford to pay 22,500. And the editorial is appealing that taking such stance will not help the economy because it is dangerous for the two parties in contention to look to the welfare and the interests of the nation, particularly that we are heading towards election time. The governors are threatening that they will now have to downsize and sack. And the editorial is saying that that will increase the population of the unemployed. And Labour should also not be very rigid. They should accept a negotiation for what can be reasonably paid, not what they want to insist upon, because the governors are saying they can't afford to pay that amount. So it's calling for a middle of the course.
Okay, Baya, would like to thank you. There was a story, we're not going to be able to discuss that today, perhaps some other time. There was a story that Kirian read from the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper. And that story has to do with the seizure of some 40 containers of tramadol. If you recall, earlier this year, tramadol and codeine and other syrups, where they were in the news. So obviously, because of the fact that a number of young persons, were finding solace, in those drugs. So 14 containers, I think it's worrisome that we have 14 containers. Who were the persons that were going to consume those?
Who imported them?
It's shocking.
Who imported them?
It is a regular heinous business that's been running in this country for a very long time. And I am sure that before they clamp down on the drug, that this person or whoever imported this particular had placed orders, before the drugs came in.
All right, so that's how far we can go with our newspaper review this morning. We'd like to thank Baya Atoyobi. See you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. When we return, we'll be going into our principal item for discussion today, and that is the anti-corruption war 3 years later. What are the results?
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
The Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, cordially invites commissioners for information across the 36 states of the Federation, heads of public information organs, information managers, and other delegates to the 47th National Council on Information with the theme Tackling Fake News and Hate Speech to Enhance Peace and National Unity. Date 11th to 13th December 2018. Arrival and registration of delegates starts by 10 a.m. on Monday, 10th December 2018. Venue, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua Hall, Murtala Mohammed Square, Kaduna. Special guest of honor, Malam Nasiru El-Rufai, Executive Governor of Kaduna State. Deaconess Grace Isugekbe, Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, Announcer.
The Aerial Assurance Challenge.
You look, Ariel, I can even do the laundry.
Prove it then.
Okay.
for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put.
You're welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah.
Welcome.
You take that one.
You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Momo to come to.
And now, before a conversation on our topic this morning, which is the fight against corruption 3 years after, let's take this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The inception of President Muhammadu Buhari revived the interest and aroused the consciousness in the fight against corruption in the country. Top of the 3 agenda of the government is to make Nigeria a corrupt-free nation in order to change the narratives of how the country